Good morning.
Now, sexual assault is something that's scary as it is. It's estimated that 2% of all adults in the world experience sexual assault every 12 months. And you can add an extra 1.7% straight away for people who were touched indecently against their will. But imagine being sexually assaulted by someone, or nobody, being touched and felt by someone who isn't there, by an entity, by a spirit, by nothing. This is the story of the ghost rapes of Bolivia. Now, all across media, from books to films to games, there have been depictions of being sexually assaulted by ghosts. But in 2005 this became a reality in Bolivia, as women and girls in the Bolivian Mennonite community began whispering that they were being sexually assaulted in their sleep, waking up groggy, in pain, feeling like they'd been sexually molested by something. Some women had gone to bed wearing their clothes and waken up naked, covered with dirty fingerprints. Others found blood and semen on their bed sheets. Some Mennonite elders believed that it was the work of the devil. Others speculated that it was just wild female imagination. The rapes were very, very real, had been going on for years. As many as 300 women and girls were assaulted during this time, and one of them was only 3 years old. Some of these phantom experiences have been brought down to real people, and 8 men have been tried since 2011 after being linked with the sexual assaults. They were part of a gang of Mennonite men that had been using animal aesthetic to knock out the women and girls as they slept in their beds. But not all the rapes have been put down to this gang's involvement. In the reporter says that men and women hold very distinct roles in their communities. With the women in the Mennonite communities not having much say when it comes to anything in their community, these are described by the reporter as self-policed rules by their people. A lot of the women she encountered whilst doing this report were classed as illiterate, unable to read or write. A lot of them couldn't even speak the language of the country that they were currently living in. These women were also unable to leave their colony without a man by their side, whether it be a father, a brother, a husband, a boyfriend, or any man from the village. These women are described as prisoners in their own homes. In the trials of the 8 men convicted, it was said that they were spraying animal tranquilizer through the windows whilst the women were asleep, then waiting a few hours, and then entering and raping the women in their sleep. Even after the trials, the elders in the Mennonite community simply waved it off as wild female imagination. And when the reporter was asked, is this usual for their community, she said absolutely. The elders say everything, and that is what goes. Part of the report that stuck out to me is that most of the Mennonite community are seen as pacifists, people who don't believe or encourage violence. But on the other hand, the women in the village were described as voiceless. Their word against a man's stood no ground. But still, for 8 men to rape over 300 people in such a short amount of time seems almost impossible. So were there more of these men operating inside of these Mennonite villages? Or was the stories of the ghosts right, these women falling asleep and waking up touched by nobody? Due to the women being illiterate, when the women were asked to be interviewed for their statements for the police on these men, they were asked to bring a man from the village that they could trust, so they could translate to English people from an unspoken language that these women speak. A lot of these women were described as the reporter as in deep psychological crises when it came to what happened with these ghosts or men. The women were described as terrified, and that truly is tragic. But what do I believe? Now, with these villages being so primitive, not entirely primitive, but just enough that people don't have all the rights that they deserve, I straight away believe that this was not the work of ghosts. This is the work of the men in the village and the patriarchy amongst the village. Women having no rights, being unable to speak and write, means that they have no way of telling people what happened. It's easy enough to wave it off as something paranormal. The elder women of the village have obviously been brought up in this environment and believe that this is what's right and what is normal, whereas the younger women in the village will constantly be terrorised by the men in the village. And this is where the issue lies. If these women believe that there is nothing wrong with what's going on, and are then brought up to believe that this isn't wrong, then they are constantly going to be caught in a cycle of abuse by these men. It's a scary thought to believe that no matter what you do or say, as little as you can do or say, will have no impact, will have no defence, and your word is simply seen as not as believable as someone else, down to something as basic as your sexuality. But with the book being written on this situation, more and more people have now become aware of the situation in these Mennonite communities, and it's finally beginning to look up for the women of these communities. So maybe there is some light at the end of the tunnel for these women. Maybe there is some sort of solace for them. Thank you for watching this video. I have been Gillo Boy Jr., and I hope you enjoyed it. This has been the Ghost Rapes of Bolivia.